Welcome to today's episode of Life in HD, where we have special guests come on and chat with us about human design in real life. And if you're new to this channel, I'm your host, Crystal Alferrero. I'm a human design guide and founder of the Human Design Academy. And today we have another treasure unicorn with us today. Her name is Becca Briggs, and she's a life coach who's a 6'2" reflector on the left angle cross of Upheaval. So, of course, we'll get to hear all about what it's like to be her, to be a reflector, and also have the chance to really soak in all of the wisdom that she's going to share with us today. So welcome, Becca. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm doing well. I'm super excited to share and see where we go with this discussion today.
Yay. And so for everyone that's watching and, if they've haven't heard of you before, or they are just getting familiar with your work. First of all, where are you from? What is it that you do?
Yeah, so I currently, just as of 5 months ago, have moved to Oregon. So I'm up in the Pacific Northwest, and I do a bunch of different modalities within my coaching. I use Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, now human design, NLP, timeline integration, hypnotherapy. And my mission is to help people break down the molds of the expectations and pressures that people have put on them so that they can truly embody who they're here to be and reconnect with their passions and purpose to fully live out the life that they were meant to live.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I love all the different systems that you're integrating together. And actually, out of curiosity, like, have you found any similarities or any patterns between the different kind of like typing systems and human design?
A little bit. There have been little areas that I would love to explore more with clients now. Because I see it within myself. I'm like, is that just a coincidence within me, or is that similar to others? But definitely there's a couple gates in my chart that I'm like, ooh, there's my Enneagram 6 coming out, or
Yeah.
especially the variables kind of relate to Myers-Briggs a little bit more. So
Mhm. Yeah.
that's been
And so,
fun to
yeah. Oh,
explore.
that's really cool. And so you're an Enneagram 6. What are your other like
Mhm.
types?
Oh yeah. So I'm a self-preservation 6 in the Enneagram, and then I'm an INFJ in Myers-Briggs.
Ooh, love that. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm like, okay, I'm kind of similar, but also different. So I'm a 7 wing 8 in Enneagram. And I think ENFP/INFP, depending on the day, kind of like almost
Okay.
50-50 in Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
So lots of similarities there. And I do see a lot of parallels between my chart and some of the things that um, are within the Enneagram and also the MBTI. I always get the letters all
Hmm.
mixed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess coming back to human design, tell us a bit more about your personal journey. Like what brought you to human design after having, you know, discovered all these other different systems before that?
Yeah. So it felt like a natural path because I have been interested in Myers-Briggs pretty much since high school, and then dove into a little bit in college, and then after college just for fun got into it. And then ended up finding the Enneagram. I've always been very interested in personal growth. In 2020 was when I got certified as a life coach. So already kind of had this framework there,
Mhm.
and then just started seeing, I think because it's in a similar realm, seeing people talk about human design in the online space. I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
Um, and was really excited to kind of explore it. And then it was funny because as an INFJ in Myers-Briggs, everyone's like, "Oh, the rarest type, you're such a unicorn," and things. And then when I pulled up my human design chart and was like Reflector, I was like, "Of course it is. Of
Oh,
course I
wow.
am." So then when I found that out, I was like, "Okay, well, like, what does this actually mean?" And it took a bit because at least at the time it was hard to find a lot of human design resources. So I ended up buying a bunch of books and kind of diving in. And it was like, I love all the different modalities for each individual thing that they kind of help guide with and open your eyes to. But I definitely feel like human design has been next level where I actually feel seen in a lot of different ways that I have not before.
Yeah.
Um,
Was there anything aside from being a reflector, was there anything new for you that you discovered when you pulled up your chart and dove into your human
Mm.
design?
Well, being a reflector and just the lack of definition and the fluidity between things made a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Having a little bit less energy on a day-to-day basis made a lot of sense. Um, Being a 6'2" made a lot more sense. Like both the 6 line and the 2 line, I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, this tracks with how I feel and how I operate. And there's been a lot of conditioning around, having to show up all the time or
Mhm.
do things this way, or, the line between being too like reckless with experimentation when I was in the 3 line era versus my, because I found it around the time that I went on the roof. So it
Mhm.
was like, oh, well, this makes sense why now I'm being called to take a step back a little bit more and I'm not in there. But
Yeah,
the line between doing everything and not doing everything, it's
of
like,
course.
okay, this is standing
Yeah.
out.
And what was the biggest challenge, I guess, for you in your deconditioning journey with human design? Because I know like reflectors, well, for one thing, it's like the inconsistent energy. And then on the other hand, there's this whole thing about, living in this fast-paced world when you're designed to take your time and kind of move through your decision making process over a certain period of time. So yeah, I guess like what was your biggest challenge in that deconditioning?
Yeah. So since learning human design, because I will say, at least at the point where I learned it, is I'd already done a lot of inner work.
Mm-hmm.
So around finding the ways to communicate to people like, hey, I work at this pace. And if this isn't for you, in jobs, it's like, if that's not for you, then this might not be for me. But, trust that I
I
will
love
get
that.
things done in the time that it needs. And just having that open dialogue has been helpful. Since learning human design, I would say one of the bigger challenges has been being aware of what is me and what is the people that I'm around. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I have a hard time realizing it until having a lot of time and space away from a
Yeah.
specific person on how much they're actually impacting how I feel, like decisions that I make, how I'm showing up, and those kinds of things. It's been a weirdly eye-opening experience.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I know, like, I've heard once, oh, yeah, if a reflector ever has the chance to like go out into the woods and, just experience what it's like to be in your own essence without interruption. Have you ever had a chance to do that? Or not necessarily in the woods,
Yeah.
but just kind of be in your own space away from everyone?
Yeah, I love camping,
Oh, there we
and
go.
like especially during like 2020, 2021, would go camping all the time and just like chill in nature for a couple days, and it was like the best the best thing I think I've
Wow.
ever done.
Oh, wow. I can imagine. Like, I would love that. It's just, I can feel a sense of peace just thinking about it and not
Hmm.
having to respond to anyone or just, social media off and all of that kind of
Oh
stuff. It's
yeah.
just, you get so much space and clarity. I can imagine coming through for you. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, like, I guess also growing up as a reflector, you're a unicorn. You're very much different from a lot of the people around you. So, what was childhood like for you?
It was a little crazy. So my dad, I don't know my dad's exact birth time, so I've looked up different charts. He's a generator. My mom is a manifester. Um,
Oh, wow.
and yeah. But they divorced when I was 2, so I primarily lived with a single mom, and she worked crazy hours all the time, and so I pretty much took care of myself in a
Mhm.
lot of ways from a very young age. And it's it's weird because like you only know what you know. So growing up, I was like, this is life, it's fine. And then now as an adult, sometimes when I talk to people about childhood,
Mhm.
like my most recent ex, a couple years ago, we were talking, and at one point he's like, you went through a lot of traumas from a very young age, didn't you? And I was like, I never really processed this all as trauma, but I guess now that you say that out loud,
Mhm.
like, yeah, like there was a
Yeah.
lot there and a lot of just a lot of figuring things out on my own and a lot of like carrying weights and responsibilities for others that I didn't necessarily ask to do or want to do at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I feel like correlates, like kind of touching in on like the left angle cross of upheaval is like I feel like I've gotten so accustomed to challenges and struggles in life that it's just made me very, I don't always like being called resilient, but it's like
I
very
was
much
thinking
like
that word.
resilient.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of one of those like I'm just tired and I don't want to be
Mhm.
resilient anymore, but it's like I've seen how it's made me a stronger person that like now I can help other people with their challenges and struggles, no matter how big or small they are, because, you know, I think a lot of times like we don't even realize how significant something is go that we're going through is like, oh, this is fine. And you're like, actually, this isn't fine. Like, how
Mhm.
do we get out of this situation?
Yeah. Oh man. And I can imagine you as a reflector and also being a coach. It's like you have this ability, the sensitivity to understanding like what people are going through, almost as if you're in their shoes. And so, like, have you had instances in your coaching where it's like you're reflecting back things to your client that they were just completely unaware of? And what does that feel like for
Yeah,
you?
I love it. I'm like I love it to like for two reasons. One, to really be able to connect with them and just feel like we're on the same page feels really good. It just feels like this moment of bonding in a way that's really
Mhm.
deep and nice. And then for my own, like myself, I'm like, yeah, like I see the thing and it feels good to like tell, like when they have those light bulb moments, that's like what they weren't able to see, but now they can. I'm like, now the shifts are going to happen. And it feels really good to be able to provide that to
Oh, wow. Yeah.
people.
And actually, I had a question because going back to what you were saying earlier about, you did your inner work before human design, and when it came to jobs and setting expectations with others around like this is my pace, this is how I work. Um, that's something that I always say to not just reflectors, but even like projectors and anyone with this inconsistent energy to be very upfront and communicate the way you work, right? Knowing yourself and that type of thing and setting those boundaries. And so I get a lot of hesitation. And even for me, if I were to have to go back into the workplace and say that kind of stuff, I think I'd be a little apprehensive about it and nervous to communicate these boundaries. And so for you, like, how do those conversations go? How do people normally react to those? And I absolutely love the wisdom around it's like, if you don't like this, then this is probably not the place for me. Right. Like, I think that's so
Yeah.
beautifully put. So, yeah, give me a little insight into how those conversations go for you.
Yeah, so I found that they've been well. People seem to receive it pretty well, and I think a lot of it is just being honest and transparent. And I think a lot of times the hesitation that we can have, or because for a long time I didn't do that, and it was like, well, I won't say anything because I don't want them to think there's something wrong with me or like find a fault within me. So I'll just like try to keep up, or I'll do what they are expecting of me, but their
Mhm.
expectations are not your reality. Like this is the reality. So I think it's better to be honest and say this is what you can expect from me. And I always
Mhm.
lead with, I have a very strong work ethic. Most of my gates are within my root center. Like I have the drive to push forward if needed. I have a strong work ethic. I follow through on what I can commit to. Um and it's just saying like it's not viewing it as like a weakness or something wrong. It's like this is what I have to offer, and these are the benefits that you get from having me work with you or for you. um and for that to continue and to be sustainable, these are the needs I need to be met, because if I burn out, then I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to follow through on the commitments that I made to you, or I'm going to start getting frustrated and overwhelmed and not want to show up anymore. Um, so for this to be like a balance thing, we need to be on the same page of what the expectations are and how you can count on me. And yeah, just having the conversation be very clear and open, I think has helped in a lot of ways. The only kind of challenge I've seen with that is when if we're on the same page and we have this agreement and then at some point or another they change their mind or
Mhm.
like expect more, because I think that's one of the challenges with reflectors is, okay, you might see this burst where all of a sudden, like maybe I have more energy or I'm able to do more or show up in a lot of different ways. And then you just expect that all the time.
Hmm.
And it's like, but wait, I told you this is where we're at. Just
Yeah.
because I had a couple days here or even like a week or a month where it was a little bit more does not make it a permanent now standard of how it's going to be from then on.
Yeah. So communication definitely key in setting those boundaries, those, I mean, the environment, setting the tone for the environment that you might potentially be working in or just like immersing yourself in. And so in talking about environment, because we obviously know it's very, very important for reflectors and their well-being and their health, et cetera. So what
Mhm.
does being in the right environment look like for you? And how do you know when you're in the right environment?
Yeah. So I love this question because as I mentioned, I just moved to Oregon a few months ago. I moved to a small town on the coast. And this is the first time that I've really felt like I've lived in the right environment. And it's been a day to night kind of switch of everything. So I was in Los Angeles before.
So
It's
different.
where I
Wow.
lived for,
Yeah.
yeah, it's where I was for 6 years. And it was fine. But it got worse and worse and worse to the point where like this time last year, I just knew like I can't live here anymore. I need to figure out where I'm going. And especially like as coaching, like I tried to do events. I tried to find a community in LA. I tried to get myself known at least to some point as a coach. I had very ambitious and nothing was working. And then I moved out here to this town and it's like, so it's been 5 months and I've been coaching regularly. I'm the
Mhm.
office manager of the wellness center that I coach at.
Awesome.
Like I've been getting all these opportunities. I have a community of people that I feel like truly see me. And I've had like a handful of people at this point come up to me at different times and say like we just see the value you're adding to our community and are so grateful for you, and I'm
Oh,
like it's like the best compliment you can you can get. And um I just feel really seen, and it makes such a difference. And I know from all the things that I've read about is the importance of reflectors being in the right environment, and this is kind of the first time that I've got to experience it firsthand of like, oh, this is how it gets to be.
yeah. And do you find that like just being in the right environment, in terms of like day-to-day decisions, that just becomes so much easier? You're not really having to make as many decisions. It just kind of happens for you, or you're
Oh
surprised
yeah.
by what happens for you.
Yeah, it's like the everything that I was working and trying so hard to make happen are coming to me instead. It's
Hmm.
like I haven't even done anything and I'm like having people reach out to me for collaborations or coaching opportunities or
Wow.
like every I'm like, okay, like it really does get to be easier. And even, it's not that like every day is just blissfully amazing.
Hmm.
But it's like even the bad days are good. Like
Hmm.
it's not anything nearly like what I experienced before, and stress is a lot more manageable, and you just feel the support because
Hmm.
I don't know if it's literally like the environment around or the people around, but it doesn't feel like such an uphill battle.
Yeah, I can feel or I can see like visually in my head just you kind of walking around and people kind of handing you a platter to choose from. It's like, okay, what do I want
Hmm.
to do today? Or like, things just kind of
Yeah,
unravel from there.
that's
And
how it
so
feels.
yeah. And so I guess like for the bigger decisions, when it came to, for example, moving from LA to Oregon, or maybe any kind of big decision that you had to make in your new environment, how does that kind of waiting the lunar cycle go for you? Or like, what does your decision making process look like? Do you wait that full lunar cycle? Are you not so strict around it? And do you kind of like tune in to the different energies that you're feeling during this time?
Yeah. I've definitely been trying to kind of track. I went through a bit where I was trying to track every day, like this is the
Yeah.
energy, this is what to tune into. Um, but even with the moon changing is like we do still get the impact from the other planetary transits. So sometimes it's
Mhm.
kind of hard to say like, well, is this the moon or is this something else?
Yeah.
So I've gotten a little bit more lenient on, but if I notice anything like really intense happening, like this happened recently where I had a pretty challenging experience come up that I had to like step up and handle, and the moon was
Mhm.
in gate 7 at the time, and I was like, oh, okay. Like there it is.
Makes sense. There we go.
Like glad that was there to back me up.
Mhm.
But I have so I have a special notebook that I've started using, say like since the beginning of this year, where at the beginning of every month I'll write down any questions that I have or any kind of like half completed ideas,
I like
and
that.
then I look at it at the end of the month, and typically I'll have had an answer by then, or it'll at least be like something has been figured out but it's still a work in progress.
Mhm.
um and it at least feels like there's progress happening, so it takes the pressure off of like I need to figure this out and do it now.
Yeah.
um but sometimes it'll take like 2 to 3 weeks to have an answer. Sometimes it will take like a full month or a month and a half, but it's been interesting to kind of track and see. Yeah, it does kind of take about a month to really have a solid answer on what I'm doing.
That's a really
The
good
move
idea
out
with the
here,
questions. Yeah.
I
Oh, go
love
ahead.
it. It's been really fun. I was gonna say the move out here was a little bit longer. So, kind of as I mentioned around this time last year was when I kind of hit the rock bottom of like I started having like panic attacks, which I haven't had since I was 19. And I was like,
Oh
okay,
no.
like this is my sign that things need to change. Like I haven't been like this depressed and anxious in a long time.
Mhm.
Um, and I started having dreams about moving to Oregon. I had like 5 or 6 dreams in a
Oh wow.
row. And that was the time I was like, okay, I guess like this is where I'm going. Um, and then I started, and this is over, so that was like October. So then I would say like kind of November, the first couple weeks in November, I started looking at different places on the map and kind of seeing what areas were around. I was in a relationship at the time, so I was trying to include him in the decision as well.
Yeah.
Which made it take a little bit longer than it probably would have if I was just doing it myself. Um, and then the second I saw, so I moved to Astoria. The second I
Okay.
saw it on the map was like this electric current feeling went
Oh
through
wow.
me.
That's really
And
cool.
it was weird. I've not had that happen before. And I was like, okay, like I think that's the place. And even for like a week or two after that, every time I would like look again at the pictures, it was like electric current. And I was like, okay, like there's something happening here. Um, and then I had planned a couple trips out to come visit because I was like, well, I'll come check it out first. I've never been here before. It's like it's crazy to move to a town that you've never visited. But
Yeah.
every time I would try to make plans to come out here, it would fall through for whatever reason. And so after like the third time of this, I was like, okay, hold on. Like, why do you really want to go out there and visit? And it was like, okay, talking to myself is I was looking for validation. I was either looking for a reason to validate the decision to move out there, or I was looking for a reason to tell me not to. But I was like, but even if you got something that told you not to, you'd probably convince yourself that it was okay because it's what you want to do. So you already know you want to do it, just do it.
Mhm.
And it was like 2 weeks later that I found an apartment and got approved the same day
So
and put in my
fast.
30
Wow.
days. So the whole process took about 3 or 4 months.
Mhm.
But it was really like once I committed to making the decision, everything happened really fast.
Mhm.
Um, and that was kind of, I mean, that was kind of the validation that I needed that it was the
Yeah.
right one. Is like everything gets to be easy once you finally
Mhm.
step into the next thing that is ready for you.
It's so, so true. Just like that path of least resistance just opens up. And
Mm-hmm.
were you surprised by anything? Like, did you experience that surprise when you came to, is it Astoria, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. I did like the whole drive up just felt very, very exciting. And getting here was just this like awe experience because I had no idea what to expect versus pictures
Mhm.
that I'd seen online. And um, the feeling of surprise is kind of it's like just this I can't talk, this dual-edged feeling where it's usually a mix of both, of feeling just like at peace and relaxed and very energized and excited at the same
Mhm.
time. So
Yeah.
definitely felt that kind of whirlwind, if you will.
Oh, I like that way to describe it. Yeah, it's kind of like a blend of everything, but good in that way.
hmm
And when you were thinking of Oregon, was that something that you like you'd heard other people um talking about, or was it just something that came to you through that dream?
No, it just came to me through dreams.
That's really cool.
Um, yeah, I know. I did go to Ireland about
Mhm.
a year ago for it was a birthday trip that I took. And I loved Ireland. I thought it was such a beautiful country. And so I did like look online of like what places in the US are similar to Ireland, because I'm
Yeah.
like it was so green and beautiful. And they were like, oh, the Pacific Northwest is going to be the closest. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool. Like I could see myself living there potentially. Um, but that was pretty much the extent of it
Yeah.
until I started having all the dreams that were specifically like dreams of me driving past the Welcome to Oregon sign,
Oh my
or
gosh.
like a town, like going to a town that had like, in Oregon on it, or like weird little dreams that were just very specific, like
Oh
you
my
need to go to
gosh.
Oregon. Like,
Premonitions. Do those count as premonitions?
maybe,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And then I looked it up. I don't know if you're into astrocartography at all,
Mhm.
but my Venus line goes right by here.
Oh, wow.
So,
So
yeah.
it works, guys. It works. Astrocartography.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. And you know, I know we talked a lot about surprise and making these aligned decisions, but what does disappointment look like for you as a reflector? Like when does that usually happen?
Yeah. So disappointment to me feels like this heaviness. It almost feels like a claustrophobic feeling. Like I feel kind of hot. I feel like I just need to go. It's just very much like your body is rejecting whatever it is, while also feeling weighed down by whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's interesting. I was thinking about it, because I had an experience yesterday, just like, thinking of like day to day staying in alignment kind of situations. And it's weird the balance between the disappointment and surprise of, I think a lot of times we think of staying in alignment as this like, I don't know if like a milestone or like this level that we need to
Mm-hmm.
be at. And like, how can I stay in alignment? But we really
Yeah.
need both, because we learn a lot from when we're not in alignment, or things come from the times where we're not in alignment. So like last night, I went out after work to a place close by, and I was there and like the vibes were a little weird. And I think I was there for like 20 minutes, and I was like, why did I want to come here? Like, what is not in alignment that like made, like, did I feel pressured to come here? Like, why did I choose this? Because this clearly like isn't, it just like
Mm-hmm.
felt that like I want to leave feeling. And then some of the people left and new people came in. And then I ended up having some really great conversations with, and like meeting new people, and like talking to a complete stranger who was interested in my life coaching. And it was like, then that surprise came up. And I was like, so like that wouldn't have happened had I not gone through
Mm-hmm.
this feeling of disappointment. So it's like, as uncomfortable as it is, it's not always necessarily the reason to like bail on something.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree with that. And like, I feel like it's kind of what you said. So sometimes that disappointment is part of that process. Like we need to at times go through those difficult situations and let go of what our mind thinks that we or what is going to bring us that surprise, what is going to bring us that success or that happiness, fulfillment, whatever. um and I feel like, and I'm talking for myself as well, even though I'm not a reflector, but those feelings of disappointment can happen a lot when we're attached, like our mind is attached to how we think
Mm-hmm.
things should show up in our lives. And so I can see that being like really, really cool, not just like experiencing that disappointment, but also being surprised on the other hand, where it's like, okay, well, it wasn't all that bad at all to begin with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I
Exactly.
needed
Yeah. It's
that.
like you can't really get that surprise without the disappointment
Hmm.
aspect being there too.
Yeah. And I also feel like we're human and we're never gonna get it right 100% of the time, probably not even close, but it's through those signposts that we're just like nudged in the right direction, right? It's
Mhm.
not like about having to make the perfect decision. And I say this as a line three. It's not about uh, always needing to make the right choice, but just making a choice and learning from whatever that is, right?
Mhm.
So, and I know you have a lot of experience in that kind of trial and error and that discovery phase because you're a 6'2". So, what was your path so far as a sixth line? Like, what has that experience been for you? And also, yeah, again, just being a 6'2" in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just feels crazy when I realize that, especially since moving out here and talking to people, and they're like, "You're just full of stories. Like, what? Like, your life is insane." And I'm like, "It doesn't feel insane because it's been my life." But then I look back, I'm like, "Oh yeah, like all over the place." Yeah. So I mostly grew up in Colorado. I went to high school in Iowa, moved back to
Mhm.
Colorado for college, and my parents told me I had to go to college. So I have a degree in event planning,
Awesome.
that I don't really
Do you
use
use it?
anymore. No, I mean a little bit, like doing like workshops
Mhm.
and
Well, that's
planning
good.
like little
Yeah.
events. But I also like most of what I learned from event planning was from internships I got, not necessarily the school itself.
Yeah.
But within that, I found all these internships. I worked for like a hockey arena, a music company, a wedding venue, nonprofits, like dabbled in a lot of everything. Um, I'm trying to, let's see here. When I was 18, I started freelance modeling. That's
Wow.
been a whole journey in and of itself.
Yeah. Oh, I can
Kind of
imagine.
establishing myself as like a creative in a weird industry. And there's been a lot of, everyone has an opinion about it, that especially I would say like during my 20s of like me trying to find myself and establish myself and putting myself out there and trial and error. It's um that's been an adventure to explore. And then even now is incorporating it within coaching is
Mhm.
finding a way to balance the two, because they're both passions of mine. And I know it's not always a conventional thing to see like a coach who also does modeling. It's a
Yeah.
little weird, but I'm like,
Not
it's
weird,
fine.
but
Like,
that's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Um, I've had a lot of different jobs in a lot of different fields, from like I worked for like an electrical manufacturing company. I worked at a vet clinic. I worked as a preschool photographer and
Oh, wow.
personal assistant for a blind family, just like a little bit of everything, pottery studios. Um, and even now with coaching, I also work at a bookstore, an
Hmm.
espresso bar, which is fun. It
Oh,
just
that sounds fun. Yeah.
like, I don't know. I just feel like my life has just been always like a hodgepodge of different things and meeting different people. And yeah, the modeling industry. I have a lot of friends in the music industry. So I went to, would go to so many concerts when I lived in Denver, and just really a very adventurous life with lots of lots of mistakes and lessons and fun times. I don't know.
Hmm. That, I mean,
And
and it all
that's
happens for you. And so, like, coming off, or I guess getting onto the roof, what has that transition been
yeah.
like? Have things actually slowed down or not so much yet? Because I know
Yes
you're
and
like,
no.
you just
Yeah.
finished your Saturn return, like not that long ago,
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah. It's been technically like my Saturn return was a couple years ago, but
Okay,
it's
never mind
so it's
then.
still like in its little shadow
Hmm.
shadow period. But it I definitely can start to feel like, I think that's part of the reason of me moving here, is I really was like, I don't want to be in the middle of everything anymore. I just want to like be in my zone and do the things that I want to do and have my people around and recluse when I want to recluse and simplify things.
Mm.
Um, I don't need to be in all the action anymore. And feeling the call to slow down. It does still feel like I'm kind of fighting this urge to like overcompensate and like keep the ball rolling. So it's like finding that balance within myself of like, okay, I feel like I need to do this and this and this, but I actually want to slow down. How do I
Mhm.
do both?
Yeah. I mean, it's that sixth line wisdom kind of peeking through, coming through, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I still see in your nodes too. It's like you have that gate 53, the beginnings and
Yeah.
always wanting to start new things. And yeah, maybe it's that. Do you find it's that pressure, that urge to like start something new or enter something new?
Always. I have like a list in my phone of business ideas that I will probably never actually start, but I'm like, oh, this would be really cool. This would be really cool. And have, yeah, lots of projects going at the same time and
Mhm.
always little ideas and inspirations. And that's where I would say like having the notebook that I refer to every month has been helpful because it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
even just asking like, do I want to start this project right now? Could be like a question I put in there. And then it'll be
Mhm.
like, no, it's been a month and I don't feel the draw to work on it. So it's fine. It'll just sit there until I feel like I want to.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that sounds really, really handy. Just having that notebook and like having writing down your questions as they come up. And do you find that like
Mhm.
sometimes you'll get an immediate, like, okay, well, why did I even ask this question?
Sometimes, but even if I'm like I feel the need to write it down, it's like maybe I just like need a little bit more clarity about like
Yeah.
what that looks like.
Hmm.
Um, and then if anything, it's like I get to write it down and cross it off. It's
Yeah,
fine.
exactly. Right. And I mean, you are a reflector, you have all this openness in your chart, right? And so I wanted to ask you about your incarnation cross. You know, you're on the left angle cross of upheaval, and especially being a reflector where all of your sun and earth gates, well, you know, your conscious and unconscious sun and earth gates, they're dormant potentials, like they're dormant. So for people that maybe are in the same situation or, you know, have trouble kind of imagining what your life theme, your life's work looks like when it's so, I'm going to say interdependent or yeah, I'd say interdependent on your relationships and people around you. Would you like to just give us some insight around the theme and what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, is I think that like childhood and having a lot of challenges growing up has helped with that, helped me be able to navigate different challenges that come up now as an adult. And I feel like that connection with other people is like both, within coaching is like if they're going through struggles, I can help support through that. And I feel like it's helped in a lot of ways of um helping me be a part of different causes
Mhm.
or formulating change in things that need to be changed because it's not just coming from me, it's coming from somebody else. Is like if somebody else has this vision of, hey, I want to better the community or better the system that's in place here, I can very easily get on board and help support with that and like light it up even more of like, okay, let's do this and this and this and this and make it
Yeah.
happen and help navigate it, where I think a lot of people don't always feel supported in their visions and
Mhm.
so don't take action, or a lot of people are just action first and don't um always have the discernment behind it. So I think
Mhm.
sometimes like especially like my gate 18 comes in handy. um
Yeah.
of how can we actually perfect this situation and make it what it has the potential to be.
And I see like definitely when I look at these dormant potentials and especially you having your unconscious sun and earth in gate 39 and also gate 38 in your unconscious earth, it's like there's so much fight in you. But I feel like a lot of that fight has to do with fighting for others and like, you know, fighting for some kind of cause that supports other people around you too. So there's so much like wisdom and insight that you can reflect back for these people that you're serving. You get energized when your fight is kind of like ignited by the
Mhm.
people that you're with. And so I feel like that plays an important role. And especially being left angle, it's like very transpersonal in nature, right? There's so much
Yeah.
transpersonal karma that you're here to clean up and just help other people with on that journey. And so I can see that definitely what you're saying. It's like you're here to kind of use all that to support everyone else around you. And you have a lot that you can contribute and also deeply understand, because in order to contribute, I feel like you really have to have a deep understanding of maybe either the people or the situation, the systems, whatever it is that you're
Mhm.
in. And so how do you kind of see this presently in in your life right now, these different themes?
Yeah. I definitely see it at so as I mentioned, working at the bookstore is I recently, as of a month ago, became manager. And so like helping the staff and like really helping support them and what their needs are. And that what I mentioned before of the situation with the moon being in gate 7 and standing up was like I had to stand up for a staff member and myself from a customer who was being belligerent. And
Mm,
it's like so really just like having the backs of the people there and being like you're not going to treat my staff like this is not okay. um Similar with I would say like the wellness center that I work at is and office manage at is like making sure that the practitioners are taken care of and that their needs are met is having everyone's backs and like helping them bring what they're doing
hmm.
alive and helping their missions grow as much as they
Yeah.
can and
Yeah.
holding
And I
that
mean,
space for them.
yeah, that's amazing. And, as part of your life's journey or your life path, there's kind of, I feel like there's a lot of confrontation up, that up in that upheaval. There's a lot of maybe
Yeah.
defending or, confrontation that need to be had. And being someone that has an undefined solar plexus, how do you navigate that? Do you ever find it difficult, or do you find it like easier to stand up for others versus like yourself, maybe personal stuff?
Definitely find it easier to stand up for others than myself. I get very upset when it's for myself, but I can more easily stand up for others. I have been trying to find this way of using confrontation in a healthy way because like it is something that has shown up a lot in my life and
Mhm.
people aren't always receptive to it and it
Yeah.
tends to backfire and you know people coming for me for advice and then not liking what the advice is. And so trying to find, okay, when is it appropriate for me to actually support you? Because if I'm giving and supporting and you're choosing not to receive it, um, that it's rough, I think, for both of us. And then unnecessary conflicts happening that don't need to happen. And that kind of I think that's kind of where it goes like I mentioned earlier is like open dialogue and communication of expectations is I've tried to be better about communicating like I'm not judging you, I'm not trying to criticize you or make you feel a certain way, like this is what I see and this is how I'm trying to help, but even sometimes that doesn't get perceived well. So trying to find ways that I can be especially with that gated provocation,
Yeah.
like
I was
I'm
gonna
becoming
say.
more and more aware of that showing up in my life. And I'm like it, I don't often mean it in a bad way, but it often gets perceived
Hmm.
more negatively. And I'm like, but if you're feeling guilty about that, like
What
that's
does
your
that
guilty
mean?
conscience. Do
Right.
better. Like, don't blame me. But it has been a challenge. And then it depends on the situation. Sometimes I would say like with the open solar plexus is like sometimes like that does um come back really negatively and it's hard for me to shake off. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's easy for me to brush off. Depends on who it is and what the situation is.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, of course. Like, there's so many nuances. It's not always like
Yeah.
one concrete solution. And I know like you've given us a lot of insights and wisdom in just navigating different areas of your design. But is there any kind of advice that you would give to any reflectors that are new to discovering their
Mm.
design? Obviously they've been living it maybe unconsciously, but is there any advice that you have for anyone in their deconditioning?
Mm. I would say So kind of like I mentioned before, is like I had already done a lot of inner work before finding human design, and it's still been a journey. But if you're learning human design and haven't had that experience before, just like be very gentle with yourself and like be graceful, take it in slow strides. Like it's all a process. There's no right or wrongness to any of it. It's just like is. Um, and just kind of like play and experiment with it and learn to trust. That's been a hard one for me, that but whenever I do find trust within myself and within the design and the experiment, it's been very beneficial. So um
Absolutely.
but yeah, just like
Yeah.
take it slow and in steps. You don't have to
Mhm.
have it all figured out immediately.
Exactly. So compassion, experiment. I know take it slow. And then there was one more other thing that I was literally
Trust.
trust. That was a big one. Yes. Very, very important. And how can we as like non-reflectors support you in your deconditioning? And, like if we have any other reflector family members or friends that we also want to hold space for, how can we best do that for you?
Mm. So two things. I think one is asking us questions, don't just assume, and like
Hmm.
really hearing and seeing what the answer is. Um, I feel like a lot of times we get asked things, but it's my answer's not enough. So like really like listening and seeing and not holding us to your expectations. Again, is the everything changes all the time. Like the I don't know, but the inconsistency isn't a weakness, it's our strength. And so embracing that and loosening the grip on what you expect of us is
Yeah.
helpful.
Well, and you just touched on that, like your flexibility is your strength. So what would you say is the biggest gift of being a reflector for you?
Mm, probably like as cliche, it's like the adaptability is
Yeah.
like just being able to get through any situation, be able to connect with different people, be able to pursue a variety of different, it's just the world just feels like this endless buffet that you get to
Yeah.
experience. And yeah, I don't know, it just feels very freeing.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. And I have an open, undefined G center, and so I can resonate with a lot of that, and I can say that definitely the adaptability and getting to experience what you're saying, like that buffet style of life,
Mhm.
is something that we can really embrace and have fun with. And so,
Yeah.
um, I guess to get a more, I guess to give our audience as well, like a little bit of insight into what you do. Is there anything that you're working on right now that you'd like to share with us, or anything
Mhm.
that could help other reflectors as well, or even non-reflectors, just kind of discover themselves more and live as themselves more?
Yeah. So one thing I have started doing recently is I started hosting moon circles. And I host them in person here in Astoria, but then I started like an email list on my website, beccabriggs.com, where you can sign up. And on the Monday closest to the full moon or new moon, I send out an email that talks about the moon phase and the astrological sign that it's in. I've started incorporating human design gates into it and journal questions to reflect on how the moon is impacting us, with a guided meditation,
That's so cool.
which
Yeah.
is that's felt really aligned to just connect more people with the moon.
Is this
And
open to just reflectors, or is it both
it's
reflect
open
like
to
anyone?
anyone.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So I'll leave all
Yeah.
of Becca's information in the description if you want to check out her moon circles. I think that would be really, really fun and a really cool experience to have, and to also be in the presence of a reflector. So but yeah, I guess to wrap things up for today, Do you have any favorite quote or mantra that you'd like to share with us?
So I have three. I like
Yes.
I was trying to think about, but I was like,
You
I
don't have to
can't
limit
choose
yourself.
one. Yeah. So one that I've always loved is not all who wander are lost.
Mm.
It's like one of my favorites. And then be the change you wish to see in the world. And then this one I had to write down because I always forget it. Is growth is painful, change is painful, but nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ugh,
That one.
that one hits.
Right?
It does.
Yeah.
Um, even actually the first one really hit me too. Not all those who wander are
Mm,
lost. Being a
yeah.
that undefined G.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we can feel like we're all over the place, but still be in the right place. So,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so, so much, Becca,
Yeah.
for sharing those with us. And thank you so much for sharing all of your reflector insights. And I hope to, again, connect with you again soon. And I hope that you have an amazing rest of your week and your evening. So, thank you for being here so early.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.